Okay, here we go. Nice and quiet.
Sound speeds, camera rolling.
Holding for sound. Last looks. Calling for last looks.
And set and action.
I need to swap batteries.
You know, making movies is hard.
Making movies is hard.
Welcome to Making Movies is Hard, the podcast about the struggles of being an independent filmmaker. I am Alrik Purcell. I am the founding and host of the podcast. This has been going on for so long. This is episode, 312? No, 313. Wow. Lots of episodes. So I'm a filmmaker. I've worked on lots of films. I've crewed up on films for years. I'm now a post-producer in-house at a production company, and I'm just finishing up my first feature film as a writer-director, The Alternate.
I am Liz Manischel. I am a writer, director, producer, and co-host of the show with 2 features under my belt. I am a former film critic and a current distribution consultant who used to manage the Creative Distribution Initiative at Sundance. And also, I am a co-founder of Constellation Incubator.
This week, we welcome producer, writer, and editor-director team Hudson Phillips and Jordan Noel to talk about their new film, This World Alone, which they made together out in Atlanta in 10 days in a very accelerated pre-production schedule, which to them didn't seem that accelerated, but to me was like, are you crazy? Jordan and Hudson talk about why they made this film, their process, and what they have learned on their road from production to the film being released through 1091, which is super exciting. This is a real good conversation to show you how you really don't need to wait for permission, and you can just go out there and make your movie. I mean, you know, they talk about how they had 2 false starts and then they made this movie, but it's interesting that it happened so quickly for them on the third go around. But I guess that's because they just decided, screw it, we're not waiting any longer. We also get to discuss the what does it mean of it all, which I'm really into talking about these days. We're going to jump right into the interview, but don't go away because we have a new installment of Get Shorty featuring the NonLove Story by Jennifer Gareski, which is very exciting, another Australian filmmaker, I believe, which is very cool. And we have another listener email to read, which is very exciting. So without any more jawing, here is our conversation with Hudson and Jordan.
So, hey, Hudson. Hey, Jordan. Thank you for being on the show. Usually we start off with an elevator pitch because we have 2 guests. Could you each introduce yourself so people can know your voices, say what your role was, and then one of you, Russian roulette, has to do the elevator pitch.
I'm Jordan Noel. I directed and edited This World Alone.
I'm Hudson Phillips, and this is what my voice sounds like. And I was the writer and producer of This World Alone. I always say writer by choice, producer by necessity.
And Hudson, give us the elevator pitch for the film.
Okay, so This World Alone is a post-apocalyptic drama/thriller that is about this teenage girl who's grown up in this world without technology or power, kind of in this bubble with her 2 mother figures. And something happens, an accident that causes her out of this bubble for the first time to experience the world outside. And she'd been kind of raised with these warring philosophies. Her mom really taught her to, the world is dangerous and you got to prepare to be hardened to last out there. And her other mother figure, who's a family friend that lives with them, kind of raises her to say, no, the world is good and peaceful and you have to have hope. And so as she goes out on this journey, she's putting these kind of warring philosophies to the test.
And then how many days did you shoot?
We shot for 10 days straight. So we lived and worked in one house. So we had about 20 of us between the cast and crew, and we'd wake up early in the morning and go out into the land around this house and shoot, and then come home and kind of plan the next day and get very little sleep. Which we would definitely not do 10 days straight again, but somehow we were able to pull it off.
What was the rough budget, or what can you talk about with regard to budget?
We can talk about all of the budget. And that's one thing I love about your podcast is just how open and honest you are about these things. Because when we were in the planning stages, we had a hard time finding actual figures, and we had to learn a lot of those lessons ourselves. But we raised $30,000 in equity funding. Through really kind of random friends and family. We set out and we said, we have these 3 people that we know will pay for the movie. And we went to all 3 of them. They all said no. But then we just started talking about it. And people who we had no idea had money just started being like, oh, we'd love to support you guys and what you're doing. So we shot for 30 grand and then quickly ran out of money.
Hudson, you were very organized about it. I think you're not giving yourself quite enough credit there about doing it in $5,000 chunks. There was a whole plan of like, here's basically a package that you could invest in. And, you put together a package of a packet of all these numbers and things that made my head spin, but made other people with money excited.
Yeah, we tried to be as organized as possible about it. But that area was just so foreign to us that it took a lot of learning and a lot of Googling in order to figure out how to do all that. But we ran out of money for post and festivals and distribution. And so we did a crowdfunding campaign to raise another 20 grand on Seed and Spark. Which crowdfunding, I think, is a thing that I think all filmmakers should do once and then only once, because it was such a painful process. But I think ultimately crowdfunding is really more so than money. It's about building an audience. And that's really what we got out of that, was just a whole new kind of group of followers.
And then how long did you spend working on the film from, coming up with the idea to now being released?
Exactly 4 years.
For both of you?
Was that. I guess Hudson had written. How long before May 18th, 2017 did you write those 10 or 12 pages?
Probably a day before.
So 4 years and a day for Hudson. But he had sent me an email because we've been collaborating and working together since 2011. So he wrote me an email on May 18th, 2017 with a short film script attached. And we very quickly decided to make that into a feature, which Hudson had said, this is part of a bigger idea, but it could stand alone as a short. So we were on set less than 3 months from that email. And then we shot for 10 days. And then I edited for a year and doing post for a year, all of that. We did a handful of premieres. So right at a year after production. And then we did festivals for a year. And then we did a pandemic for a year. And now here we are.
Just to reinforce that, it's like everyone always talks about getting to production and financing, but it's like everything was tremendously lopsided in the world of post-production and marketing and distribution, which is really interesting. How big was your crew? I mean, you talked about 20 people in the house. Would you say your crew was about 20?
Yeah, fluctuated. I think on any given day we had between 18 and 22 people, because we had like some Steadicam guys that would come for a day or for 3 days. Like Rich Thompson, our fight coordinator guy, was there for half the time, not all the time. So between 18 and 22, I think is right.
Yeah, we had a lot of people that would come out. We were like, hey, we can pay you for a day. And they'd come out for a day and they'd be like, can we hang around and keep helping for the rest of the week? And so it was a cool vibe that people wanted to be around and be a part of this.
And then compared to all the other projects you've made, how difficult was it to make this one?
It's kind of apples and oranges, because we'd done some commercial shoots, we'd done some short films, and it just nothing compares to doing a feature. Just the amount of work. Not so much definitely on the filmmaking side. From day one, we were learning lessons every day that we weren't aware of, or kind of roadblocks that we didn't know we'd have to face. But really the biggest difference was kind of what you said, what came after, those 3 years of navigating distribution and post and film festivals, and all of that stuff was new for us. So I kind of say like each level of this thing has been a new kind of film festival for us and a new learning experience.
The hardest part about this has been how long it has dragged on. And it's been like an equal amount of work just about at every point in the 4 years, with the exception of those 10 days that were a little bit more work. But yeah, I mean, our first short film, we shot 4 days and post took a long time, but like we were done in a couple months. I mean, looking back, it was a lot easier than this, but less rewarding.
Where are you based? Just, I'm trying to get a picture for our listeners of, because this is a micro budget feature with no like A-level cast, right?
Right.
And you have an interesting story about how you financed, but you did quite well with festivals. So I'm just trying to go back. So where did you make this film?
We're in Atlanta. Jordan's now lives in Nashville, but he moved after we filmed. So Atlanta has some pros and cons. I mean, the pro is that they shoot so much stuff here that you have access to a lot of really talented casting crew. And so working on short films, we kind of collected key casting crew that we really loved working with, and we'd continue. And that was really the best part about the short film process, is we just found people that we fell in love with and became kind of our filmmaking family. And so Atlanta is great for that. But then the downside of Atlanta is there's an identity crisis of really figuring out what indie film is in Atlanta, and we haven't quite figured that out. And there's a bit of a chip on everyone's shoulders because Hollywood comes in here and films stuff and then leaves, and so there's kind of a bitterness, and so it's kind of a little bit difficult to find the right people that still have that optimism. I think a lot of people are just kind of burnt out on it. But we shot in, we kind of followed that model of, use what you have. And we knew we didn't have much money, but we did have the beautiful North Georgia mountains. And so if you watch the film, 80% of it takes place outside, because everywhere you look, it looks like a movie set. It's just gorgeous. And so we let that do a lot of the heavy lifting for us, just having access. So it was about 2 hours north of Atlanta.
Why did you guys decide to make the movie so quickly? Like from the inception of the script to going out and shoot? Like, was there a reason behind that? Like, was there just like a fire that you needed to giving you guys this energy? Or like, what was why didn't you take more time to like develop the script, or did you just know it was ready?
I don't think it felt quick to us. Because we had been developing, we've been talking about making a feature for so long. We had already developed, or, been in the process of developing, I think at least one, maybe two features before this that just we spent years on and that never went anywhere. So once this idea came up, and Hudson turned the first draft of the full feature script around in 2 weeks after that initial email. And so we knew it wasn't like ready to shoot, but we knew that because of the way that we work together, that we would continue working on that every day. And we just had to set a goal and go for it. And my wife at the time was a teacher. So in order to shoot, like we needed to shoot it in the summer because I have my kids while she was teaching. And so it was just a matter of logistics, and naivete of thinking, all right, that's the date. Let's do it.
Well, let's go back even further. So you started a creative collaboration 10 years ago. And I guess what I'm curious about is how do you know? How do you know when that's the one? When you're, how did you know that you could trust each other and work in this intimate way for the next 10 years? Or was there a period of kind of like dating where you weren't sure?
That's a great question. Because it definitely is a relationship in some way like that. Jordan and I had known each other kind of on and off, mutual friends, like going to, shows in the Atlanta area, that kind of stuff. And I had been writing for a while and struggling with the model of writing something, sending it to LA, nothing would happen, and getting frustrated with the whole Hollywoodness of it. And Jordan was making music videos at the time for local bands. And so we ran into each other at a show and said, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing? And so let's go make a short. And so I was anxious to actually start making stuff as opposed to sitting around and waiting for stuff to be made. And I think it was a trial by fire. We just jumped into it with both feet and found that, well, first of all, Jordan and I don't have much in common in terms of tastes. Which I think is actually a pro. It's kind of like in relationships too. If you're just like the person that you're dating, you're going to butt heads with them a lot more. So Jordan had the stuff he was great at. He had his kind of taste, and I had the stuff I was great at, and I had my taste, and we kind of stayed in our lanes and challenged each other. So, I might write something that's kind of an overly sentimental scene or something. And he's like, no, let's pull it back and make it a little bit darker. And it's those kind of conversations that it was just a good balance, but it was definitely trial by fire, just jumping in and doing it. And it kind of, that's the case with all of our crew. We would bring them in for a short, we'd make something. And if we got along really well and they just brought something, their own kind of unique vision to it, then we'd make sure that we'd bring them along and invite them to the next one.
And did you guys have production backgrounds before doing this? Like, had you work on sets, like PA, any of that kind of stuff? Or did you just figure it out, go out and make movies?
We both come from a visual art background. We're both graphic designers by trade, although I do a lot less of it now. But no, We didn't. I don't know why I was going into that, but no.
Yeah, our first day shooting our short should tell you something. We show up, we had no idea what we're doing. Our first day of shooting started at 1 a.m. and we shot all the way until 12 the next day because we needed this restaurant location. That was their only time. And it was a complete mess. But after that first day, we felt like we had learned so much. And after that second day, we had learned so much. I hadn't really been on sets. I did some like extra work when I was a kid. And so I kind of was on some movie sets then. But you don't really pick up the practical stuff. And so to answer your question, no, we had no idea what we were doing on that short film. And then each one we did, we learned a little bit more and a little bit more.
I remember why I was saying that now. It's because neither Hudson nor I are college graduates. We're both self-motivated, passionate people who learn how to do things we want to do on our own in a way that in some way makes us learn lessons the hard way, in ways that if we'd gone to school for any of these things that we do professionally or passionately, we wouldn't have made the same mistakes. But that's just, I think it's how we both learn, is by making our own mistakes, trying to do it.
There's like a lot of film school graduates who have not made a feature. So, I mean, there's the other side of it too, right? Like the chutzpah and the desire to prove yourself. And I mean, there's a lot of things that can be garnered that are incredibly positive. I just am thinking back on, I think you guys were in post and Hudson reached out to me through maybe Mia Bruno, or I forgot where it was, Hudson, but you were like on this like detective sleuthing, you were gathering intel on distribution and marketing. And I have a feeling you probably did that throughout the entire process in terms of data gathering. And I want to just go back to like the genre of this film. So it's this, you mentioned it was a thriller. It sounds like it's kind of a hybrid of multiple genres. Was this all by design? I mean, you said you wrote to your resources, but genre does have a better time in the marketplace. So what was that also part of, the puzzle, I guess?
Genre just came out of, it wasn't intentional. It was just, that's what I love. Those are the movies I love. And those are the movies I want to write. I started out writing with a couple of buddies of mine, and we did comedy, and I enjoyed that, and especially writing with partners. And they both got burnt out on the process and kind of dropped out along the way. So I had the opportunity of like, I have to rebrand myself now as a solo writer. And so from the very beginning, it's always been, sci-fi fantasy kind of stuff, just because that's what I love. And so it wasn't intentional and like, hey, this will sell better. And I think from Jordan's perspective, and he can kind of respond too, he comes from a different place, that he just cares about the story no matter what it is. I also have a marketing background. That's my day job. And so some of that came up afterwards. But one of my philosophies with marketing is you can't sell something that's not there. So like if I didn't have a passion about a post-apocalyptic story and I was just telling it because I thought it would sell, that's going to come off so fake and audiences are going to see through that. So a big part of the marketing side was let's sell our passions. Let's tell the story that we really want to tell in the way that we want to tell it. And that was always the challenge, because I wanted to tell sci-fi fantasy stories, and it's difficult to do on a budget.
Alrik and I have both done a sci-fi feature, so we're with you on that point.
Yes, indeed. That's why it took me 6 years to make mine. But so the question I have now that I'm really curious about is, when you have that short film, you say, let's make it to a feature, and you write it in 2 weeks. Like, where and how do you come up with the budget to make this feature after stumbling on 2 other projects before that?
Yeah, I think the other projects helped because we were a little overly ambitious with like, hey, people will just give us money. And so those were a little more pricier, and they were a little bigger films. And so from the very beginning, we wrote with budget in mind. So we said, what can we afford? There's only 5 actors in the film, because we knew the less people, we knew the less locations. And so we wrote with that specifically. It's essentially one house, and then outside is where the film takes place. And so we were very intentional about that. I kind of think budget is arbitrary a little bit. I think if we had raised, $500,000 or we had raised $30,000, we would have made essentially the same film, maybe more time, maybe nicer equipment, that kind of stuff. We probably would have definitely put money behind production design and some things that we kind of feel is missing from the film. But I kind of think when you set that date and you just move forward with it, I think had we gotten $10,000, we would have made that $10,000 version too, with a much, smaller crew, and probably we might have done some rewriting in order to make that work. But we kind of treated the script kind of fluid in that way. One of the ways we got around budget in a creative way was the film has these voiceover segments where it's almost like I was real inspired by, I don't know if you guys have seen Mike Mills' 20th Century Women or Beginners. And he does these kind of,
yes.
I love that movie. So he does these kind of like voiceover segments where it's kind of a slideshow where it's kind of, it's a still image and he'll kind of do this voiceover over it. And we were inspired by that, or I was. And so about like 8 pages of the script are these voiceovers. So that's 8 pages of the script we didn't have to shoot. We had to do it in post. And I think it was probably more work for Jordan to kind of pull the images where it's our lead.
It may have taken more hours to make that than it did to shoot the film.
But the idea is that the lead character, Sam, is going through old newspaper clippings and old magazine clippings and old photos that she had found in this post-apocalyptic world as she's telling the story, talking about what the world was like before, what she thinks the world was like before. So that kind of did a lot of heavy lifting for us on the budget side, but also let us play in the genre side and let it explain the post-apocalyptic thing in a visual way that didn't require, special effects or something like that.
I'm going to press on Alrik's question even more, though. Like when you went to potential investors, and I understand, I'd love to hear more about this $5K, a piece package, if you want to talk about it. But when you both were pitching to investors, were you making promises saying things like low overhead will definitely recoup, or like, look at all these comps like Mad Max, we're destined to succeed? Like what was your argument, or was it this kind of patronage model where investors were brought on to invest in you two as a collaborative team?
It was a little bit of both. I'll say we did all that stuff. We did comps and we did low budget comps. Like I want to say we even did bread and butter as a comp only because it's one of the only ones we could have found data on, and so we were very realistic about it. And we're very upfront, like, hey, you may not see your money back. We weren't making empty promises. But I'll say that every person that invested in us, that's not what they cared about. They cared about us. They cared about like one of the guys who's an old friend who I had no idea had any money, but he came to me and he said, he's like, I don't really have like a life passion like you do, so I want to help you find yours. And so he gave us some money to make that happen. So yeah, very practically, I think we said $5,000 increments. I think we were trying to raise 50 at the time. Maybe it was just 30. So it would be like 10 of those. And then, so like, for instance, 2 friends came to me and said, hey, can we combine? And each gave 2,500 and they got one kind of increment. And we promised 120% of the budget back to them, or 120% of their investment back to them before we see anything. And so that's kind of the model we went with. And so now that the movie's out, that's the thing that keeps me up at night is, are we actually going to make money off of this? And one of the things that I'm exploring is we're looking at doing another film, and we're hoping to shoot by the end of the year, is figuring out not making a movie because it costs something, but making a movie because it's worth something, and really figuring out. There's this line in that movie, You've Got Mail, where Joe Fox is like looking at this book in the bookshop, and the salesman guy is like, yeah, the paintings are like hand tipped or whatever. And he's like, oh, that's why it costs so much. He's like, no, that's why it's worth so much. And so that's been kind of my model with film stuff is ultimately, I'm not sure that This World Alone is worth more than $30,000. I'm not sure that it has that value without a star or without this kind of hard genre and just the kind of slow paced film that it is. And that's something we're looking at with the next one is, if we're raising a certain dollar amount, we need to make sure that the end product is actually worth that amount so that we can make it back. So my big fear is that, hey, maybe this one isn't even worth 30 grand. And we'll have to explore that and kind of at least treat it as a loss leader and learn the lessons from it.
So I guess you don't know the answer to that question yet. You don't know if the film is worth 30,000 yet.
Yeah, we're still figuring out just what all the models are to make back money. And we're in the, TVOD section right now. So it's on iTunes and Amazon and all that. And we're just now getting data from just like one of those platforms, and we'll figure it out as more of them come in. But it only came out 2 days ago. So we're still figuring all that out. And then AVOD's coming up. We're talking with international partners about that, and we're pitching the streaming services. And so hopefully all of those revenue sources will kind of add up. But we've also tried some creative things too. We launched like an anthology book that's like quote unquote inspired by the film. Just to have more revenue streams or to test out new revenue streams to bring in just as much money as we can.
I want to sneak in one more question. Did you try to do traditional distribution? Like, did you take it to places that might buy it and, just take it from there? Or did you just decide from the beginning, no, we want to do self-distribution on our own?
Well, we are distributed through 1091 Pictures. So we are traditional distribution, but our initial goal before COVID was to do kind of what Naomi McDougall-Jones did with Bite Me. We were really inspired by her and met with her a few times to do kind of a self-book tour and all that. And we actually had booked maybe a dozen art house theaters and colleges, and had this whole plan for last year to self-distribute. That's why we printed the book as part of that, so we'd have something physical to sell at those shows. That's probably not the right term, those screenings. And that was around March of last year. So all of our plans got shut down. And so we pivoted to traditional distribution. And so we finally bit the bullet. And because Jordan and I, as he mentioned, we kind of come from this, DIY aesthetic, and we both toured in bands. And so we thought that was a really fun, unique way to release a film. And we're very excited about that. So, but we reached out, just blind emailed maybe a dozen distributors, and we heard back from about 5 who watched the movie. Or maybe half a dozen that watched the movie and 4 offers, something like that. And 1091 was the only one that came back and said, we love your trailer. We love your key art. Let's do this. They were just full in on what the movie was and not trying to make it something that it wasn't.
And they didn't offer you any money up front.
Right. Yeah. No money up front.
Just wanted to hear that.
Yeah.
So I know we're flip-flopping in terms of timeline, but Jordan, when you were facing this micro budget feature at this really reduced budget, right? $30,000 is nothing to laugh at. That's a really nice car. That's like a down payment. That's a lot of really great things. Yeah. But I'm just curious because I don't know, I suffer from anxiety. I was just curious, what did you do when you felt the pressure, when you felt the anxiety about being the directorial helm of like such a feat? I'm just curious about getting in your head a little bit.
I am what I refer to as a commitophile. I just love to commit to things before I really think about them. And this was no exception. I knew I wanted to do it. I knew that I had Hudson, standing with me as far as, making this happen. I think if I had felt, when I get anxiety about projects, it's when I feel like it's just me. I love to collaborate. And so knowing that I had my collaborators, Hudson, Trisha, the DP, the cast we already knew, I felt really naively confident as far as I want to do this, and I'm just gonna do it. Same thing I did with parenting. That's how I have children. I was just like, let's just have a kid. Let's not think about how it's going to affect the rest of our lives. Let's have some children and we'll figure it out day by day. And, here we are. I have a movie and I have 2 kids.
As an upcoming parent, that makes me feel very zen, it's like, just figure, it's all good. could just
Well,
figure it out.
I will not lie to you. I have not found the zen of parenting.
I was about to say your attitude has probably changed since then, hasn't it?
Absolutely.
Sorry, Alrik.
Dang.
So it's just how I am. I just set a goal and I just work towards it step by step. I'm a very in the moment person. I really don't worry about the future very much. I let my wife worry about the future. I let her ask questions like, why are you directing a feature film? How much are you getting paid? Where are the kids going to be? I'm very comfortable saying, I don't know. I don't know yet.
The question that just comes, to me immediately for both of you is like, and you kind of talked about it a little bit, with this idea of like, what is a movie worth? And like, should we actually make this movie if it's at this certain budget level? But would you do it again? Like, would you make a $30,000 movie again? Or does it have to be a certain level up in order for it to make sense in your lives now?
I would, with the one caveat of I really care about the people who are working on it feeling like they are being paid what they're worth. I don't care about me. A lot of us deferred our payments, and I'm so comfortable with that because if I make any of it about money for me, then I think my attention is on the absolute wrong thing. I cannot make art and think about money at the same time. So I'm all about making the art no matter what kind of budget we have, as long as people feel like they're being taken care of.
Yeah, and we did, everybody that worked on the film got paid something. I mean, nobody made a ton, but everybody did get paid. And so that was very important to us, that we weren't taking advantage of anybody. But the other thing Jordan and I talk a lot about, we certainly want to take steps up each time. But one thing we talked about with this film of why we would do it just like this again, is kind of this illustration of, if you have a lot of money and you come up to this cliff, you can just build a bridge across. But if you can't afford to build a bridge, you kind of just have to leap. And that leap leaves room for magic. And magic, we've got so many stories of just how things miraculously came together on this film, because we couldn't pay our way out of it, right? So, and that's the kind of stuff that we wouldn't trade for anything, because that really is the creative process for us. That's art, that's collaboration, just leaving room for some magic to happen.
We talk a little bit about the idea of volunteer laborers and compensating your crew properly. I mean, we talked about it, I think, a few weeks ago with Jeff Ryan's film Youthman. I know Alrik and I had like a small chat about it. What are alternate plans? Like, we could even brainstorm them on this podcast right now. It's like, if you don't have the money, which is, obviously a hard cost, not having money, are you providing training or education on set? Are you doing labor swaps? Are you, I'm just trying to think of what else can be offered, because we can never guarantee financial investments in our projects. And it sounds like we're all the type of people who just want to keep on making movies. Mm-hmm. So have you kind of workshopped that idea of compensation without financial fallout, I guess?
It's a great question. And I'm not sure we've found a solution for it yet. One thing that we did on this film, at least, so like everybody got paid, I think we paid $150 a day for everybody that was on set, something like that. With maybe 5 people deferred to, if we make anything, then they get paid that same amount. But one thing that we did in order to get kind of these people on set was give them one step up from what their experience was. So V. Kelly, who was our special effects supervisor, she was a special effects assistant on a lot of stuff like Adult Swim shows and all that. So we put her in charge of that whole area, and she just, exploded with talent all over it, every single day, bringing new stuff to it, going well above her job. Our DP, Trish, DP had a lot of shorts before, and I think maybe 2 features, but her day job is a second AC on a bunch of Hollywood stuff. And so we let her, kind of run our camera department and be DP and all this kind of stuff. So that model of letting people do things that they haven't done before or don't have a lot of experience in, really helped people be committed, not because of the money, but because of the passion and because they could stretch those muscles in a way. And Jordan and I always say, we're not experienced, so why would we expect everybody on the crew to be experienced in that same way? So giving people opportunities and like that. A lot of our cast, hadn't started in movies before. And so just giving people opportunities where we saw potential.
I want to stress something too, in addition to that, about atmosphere on set and equality on set. I mean, money is obviously hugely important and people need money to live. But there's something else I think that is also super important, which is that people feel some ownership over the project, which is part of what Hudson's talking about like letting people do jobs that they want to do, not just what they already have experience doing. But I growing up in music and doing all that, I also worked in restaurants, and I worked at a particular restaurant where I felt real ownership, and I did not make very much money at that restaurant, but like I would have done anything there. And then when that started to erode was when I was watching how much I was maitre d'. Everybody knew me as the guy in the front of that restaurant. But like the servers just started making way more money than me. And that eroded a lot of my passion for the job, not because I wasn't happy with the amount of money I had, but because there wasn't any quality there. And so I think it's really important, and it's something we tried to do on the This World Alone set, was like, director, writer, producer, like we're not getting special treatment. We all stayed in this house, and Hudson and I slept on the floor in the living room of this house. We didn't have our own room, because I think that's the kind of thing that really erodes that trust, is if people seem to be being taken care of more than others.
Yeah, I love that. I slept on a couch, and gave my PA and actor bedrooms, while I took the couch. And I mean, I feel like, that was my preference, but I think it also just helped. It's just one of those things you can do to make everyone feel, appreciated, I guess.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, we didn't originate that idea. I think it goes back to, the captain going down with the ship, or the kinds of things where everybody gets the same sort of situation.
So Liz, do you have a big final question? I have one really good final question.
Do yours and then final five.
Okay. So we've been talking a lot about this sort of concept of, to boil it down into a few words, like what's the point, basically? Like, why do we even make movies? And like, what are we even looking to do here? Like, what are our goals? So I guess like my question for both you guys is like, what is the point for you? Is it like making this movie, getting it out into the world, people seeing it, like, one view, one person reacting to the movie positively? Does that make it all matter? Or like what is the ultimate journey that you are on as filmmakers? Like, where are you hoping to go, and what is it really for you? Like, or is this it? And that's great. Like, what is it?
Yeah, I think that I just kind of feel like my purpose, and hopefully a lot of humans feel this way, is a purpose on earth is to just bump into people. The way I like to say it is, create beautiful things with beautiful people. And that's, from Jordan and I collaborating, to bringing on this team, to being on set and just investing in each other and loving on each other. It goes all the way through, going to a festival and interacting with an audience, and interacting with investors, this whole crowdfunding. Like, to me, it's all about people. And art is just kind of the best way that I've found to connect with other people. And it's why indie film is so rewarding, and screenwriting on its own is so lonely. Like, you're just, sitting by yourself at a computer, and you don't get that kind of interaction. And like we mentioned before, we both played in bands, and that was the thing I missed the most from playing in bands, is not the creating, because I get to create on my own all the time, but the interaction with an audience. And so just every step of this thing, that's where we start. And that's our focus, is relationships come first, and relationships come before the art, and the art just serves those relationships. But it's also why, on this side of things, now that it's kind of done, like, we so want to do another one, in order to kind of keep that train rolling, in order to build those new relationships again, because It's these high highs and these low lows, and you get down to the bottom, it just feels so lonely again. And so we just want to keep doing that. We just want to keep creating beautiful things with beautiful people.
I love this question. I think it's such an important question that we all should be asking ourselves all the time, which is not a question I ever thought to ask until Hudson and I made our first short film together. And the guy who paid for it, we had one investor who paid for this short film, and he had a theater in his house. And so we finished the film. No one had seen it. And we took it to his house and we all sat there and watched it with him. It was 20 minutes long and it ended and the lights came up and he just kind of looked at us for a minute and then he said, "What was the point?" And his taste and our taste were not the same. And he wasn't investing in our film because he believed in the film, but because he believed in us and wanted to foster us. But we laughed a lot at the time, but I think we were also kind of terrified a little bit at like, what is the point? What are we doing? What did we make here? And I don't know that I have long-term goals. I'm not a financially minded person. I'm not a business minded person. I just want to make art. That's how I identify as an artist, even more than a director. And so I desperately want to make more films. I want to make films my whole life because it's the most rewarding artistic project that I've ever been on. I think because of the collaborative process. But if I also never had another opportunity to make one, I would be so happy that I just was able to make this one, because this one changed my life in like profound ways. And I just have so much to be grateful for. And I'm also terrified of making a second film. So that might be part of it.
But you're so balanced and low key. I doubt that you really have sincere fear about it.
I have a long track record of being really good at something the first time I do it, and not so great on all subsequent attempts.
It's so funny. I feel like, I can relate to that. Like my first short film has gotten the most love out of anything I've done. I've made like 6 others after, and even my friends, my mom, like they're like always, "Oh, that first one was so good," and then like just all the others, they're like, "Whatever, who cares?"
The early funny ones. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. The early funny ones.
Why do you think that is, though? Is there something about like you learn too much, or you got exposed to too much? Like, is there something about the innocence of doing the first one?
I mean, I like the others better.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But it's also running out the gate, right? You put everything into that first project, even if it's technically may not be as proficient. I think there may be more energy.
I think you think a little bit less about it as far as like micromanaging every decision.
Oh, yeah.
And doubting every decision, because you don't necessarily even know that there's other options of ways to do things. I think if you're not open to it, then you're not as natural necessarily in your creating.
Yeah, I don't know. Also, I think like you make a lot of mistakes the first time, and then maybe there's some like magic that happens in mistakes somewhere,
For sure.
Oh, I'm all about magic mistakes.
But we had that same experience. Our first short got a lot of attention, and everything we did after that until now. So gosh, I hope that's not the case with features.
All right, jumping into final 5 questions. So why don't we'll just do an order just to make it super easy, right? So Jordan will go first, Hudson will go second, if that's okay with y'all. What's the first film you ever made, and how do you feel about it now?
The first film I ever made was in probably 2004. And it was an animated short that I was, it's not right to say I was homeless. I did not have a home at the time, and I was sleeping on couches and doing things. I'd just gotten off tour and a band had broken up. So I had a lot of artistic energy and I didn't know what to do with it. So I was staying with a friend and she had a computer and she would go to work all day. And I just was like, what if I sat here and animated a film? Wouldn't that be interesting? And it was only a couple minutes long, and I just loved it. It was about a stick that fell off a tree in a thunderstorm, and it was about that life of that stick. And sadly, it disappeared when her computer did whatever computers did in 2004 or 5, and I haven't seen it in 15, 16 years, and I don't think it exists at all. So I feel great about it because I can't see it. But I have great memories of it, and it really made me fall in love with moving pictures and creating them.
I guess the first film I made would have been like in high school with pals. So we would do, VHS spoof movies of, I think we did like Mission Improbable or like, Die Hard, like at our high school, and which is insane. We actually, we found the Die Hard one and watched it recently, and this is, mid 90s, and we're like bringing all these like BB guns into school and running around, which is just certainly a different world now that feels so weird, but like those were I definitely think that I kind of caught the bug at that point, and they didn't really have stories, they were just scenes, and so I started writing in high school too, and kind of fell in love with that, but yeah, they were just, innocent and fun.
What's the best filmmaking advice you ever received? Jordan's first.
I'm so bad at remembering specific things like that. So I'm going to paraphrase this, but it's Carl Jung, the smart dude from a long time ago. It was not a filmmaking advice, but the advice is that the greatest damage done to a child is the unlived life of the parent. And as a parent, trying to find the balance of being a great parent while also still doing what I do and following my passions is what allows me to be a filmmaker and a parent. And I think so. Carl Jung, I think, gave me advice that allows me to be a filmmaker. And without that, I'm not sure I'd be able to be one.
Yeah, mine probably came from, and it wasn't specific to filmmaking either, but about 12 years ago or so, maybe 10 years ago, I was very frustrated, burnt out with the screenwriting process in the world. It was kind of before we started making indie film stuff. And I had lunch with a friend of mine whose son, he's actually one of my best friend's father, and my best friend had passed away in our college years. So I was getting lunch with his father, and he became a pastor after his son died. And he said the reason he became a pastor was because he wanted to help people who had gone through similar situations. And so I kind of come to him and unload on all this, seemingly, I was going through a divorce. So some of it was pretty serious, I guess. And I was just lost at this point in my life. And he said very clearly, Hudson, what you need to do is take what you're great at, which is this writing, and take the life that you've lived and experienced, which is all these kind of hardships and struggles, and combine the two. So write about what's honest, and write about what's pure, and write with transparency. And that just changed. It became my why. And it's still why I write today, is in order to be kind of an honest mirror for people's emotions and feelings. And the idea is, don't provide pat answers for people, but just show people's experiences on screen as honestly as possible, and people will find healing in that.
What are your goals as filmmakers?
My goal is we talk in the art world, we're always talking about voice and finding your voice and this sort of thing. And my goal is related to, I think, rejecting that in some ways, because I grew up a suburban kid in the South, and I don't, it's not that I have these things that are super important to say. It's that I want to be a vehicle for other people's voices. Like, there are stories that can be told that we can learn from. So, there's the also at the same time, there's the idea that we go to the movies to see ourselves. And I think that there's value in that, but I think we also need to be going to the movies to see each other. And I think I want to provide a way and tell stories and direct in a way that we can see each other and find value in each other and see ourselves in each other. There's so much there, and I want to explore that. And all I want is the opportunity to do that through art. And I think maybe the best way, and maybe where my natural talents are in directing those kinds of stories.
I just want to write Marvel movies.
Yeah, that tracks.
Yeah, I think in an ideal world, I would, write some big budget action adventure thing and then go with Jordan and a bunch of pals up into the mountains again and make a movie and just go back and forth between those two worlds.
I just found out that one of my heroes, Stuart Gordon, wrote Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. And he like directed Reanimator and, all these other like wonderful, like amazing sci-fi films like Robot Jocks and Space Truckers, which I just saw for the first time the other night. And it's like, oh man, what a world to be able to like write that kind of big budget movie and then go off and make all these tiny little budget sci-fi films.
That's cool.
Yeah. Have you seen Robot Jocks lately?
I just did. I just saw it for the first time and it blew my mind and I love it.
Because I watched it all the time when I was a kid, and I haven't seen it since then. But I think about it all the time.
Yeah, it's really fun.
And then we had a neighbor move in across the street, and he's a voice actor, and he was in Robot Jocks, but I haven't talked to him about it yet.
Got it.
But I'm done. I need to see it again before I talk to him
amazing.
about it.
The question I have is, if you could go back in time, what's one piece of advice you would give yourselves?
I would tell myself to sleep, and to that it's okay to. So there were a couple years around the time that we made the film that I was sleeping about 3 hours a night because I would parent all day and I would edit and work because I was doing design and all this other stuff all night. And I think I did a real detriment to myself and to my family and to my kids, like just falling asleep at stop signs and not having any patience and just working too hard. So I would give myself the advice that, however long it takes to do a project is how long it takes. And you have to also have a quality of life and value, some self-care and taking care of yourself and the people around you while you create.
I think I would tell myself quantity produces quality. I think when I first started writing, I finished one screenplay and I'd be like, this is my golden ticket out of here. And would just sit on it for a couple of years and then like, oh, I guess it wasn't. I better write another one. So I wish I would have written faster and I wish I would have written more. I would love to have more of a body of work, I think.
Final question. Is making movies hard?
Yeah, it's really hard, but it's the reward far outweighs the difficulty of making it. Anything worth doing is hard to do. Relaxing is hard to do, but it's worth it.
Making this film is definitely the hardest experience I've ever had. And almost every step of it was harder than the previous step. I think we got done filming the movie and we're like, we're done. That was great. And then we faced all this stuff on the back end. But yeah, like Jordan said, there's not a minute of it that I would trade out. I've loved every single second of this thing. And I think the difficulty of it is part of the magic and part of what makes it feel so like a valuable part of my life.
Sell your wares. How can people support you and see the film?
You can watch This World Alone on iTunes, Amazon, every digital place that you can rent or buy a movie. You can find all of those links at thisworldalone.com. Yeah. And we're at This World Alone Film on social media and all that.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, guys. Can't
you.
wait to hear what you guys make next and keep the dream alive,
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, this was a fantastic conversation.
We really miss, I think Hudson mentioned this earlier, but like we just love connecting with other people. The film festivals and all that, we hear people say they're a drag, and I don't think they're a drag. I think it's the best to get to meet other people and to make a movie as an excuse to meet other people is a pretty good excuse to meet other people. We wanted this release to be a tour, like we said, and it's been kind of a bummer to not have it be that, but I can see you guys and hear your voices and we get to have a conversation, and that makes me very warm and fuzzy inside.
Liz, what did you remember from our talk with Jordan and Hudson?
Every time I talk to Hudson, I feel kind of like, I don't know what the expression is, but like kind of pumped up. Like I just really like his attitude. I think he's in it for the right reasons, and that was my first time meeting Jordan. And he seemed like a really good team. I like the idea of going for something without fully thinking it through. I think very often artists obsess over things and we worry and we analyze and it delays our projects. So I admire their just kind of chutzpah. But I think you and I talked a little bit after we recorded it. I think we talked about Jordan's wife and how I was like, I want Jordan's wife on the podcast to talk about the decision to make the movie. And, we received this email. I think we read it last week from Kyle Kenyon, where he was talking about how independent filmmakers come from money or a certain level of stability, or if they have partners who could support them. And this is like a sub thread that might come out in every single episode, but I'd love to just interview like 15 million filmmakers and be like, what are the economics of how you live your life while being a filmmaker? And we didn't get into it with Jordan because I felt like it was invasive. But it did spark this thought in me, which is like, how can you make it in the indie film business without a supportive partner?
You can't, is the answer to that question. But I would say that we do often and dig in and like ask people what they do for their day job, to really get into like, where the money comes from. We did it with Jordan and Hudson, but it seemed clear to me that they had other jobs, whether it was design or something else,
I mean, Hudson does a really cool podcast about, and he kind of has like a little mini empire for writing. So I think it's Script Blast. I hope I'm going to correct it. I'm going to look it up and I'm going to correct it. But yeah, I don't know what they do for their like 9 to 5. Maybe that is what they do. Maybe they are filmmakers.
I don't think so. I think they do something else. There's got to be, there's no way that they're just filmmakers only for their 9 to 5. I mean, the design thing could be one thing. That's definitely, I wouldn't put that in the category of filmmaking. But when I talk about like filmmaking 9 to 5, it's like, a very, very rare breed of people, because I'm speaking about like narrative filmmaking for money. Like we've probably had like I would say maybe 5 people that we could count on our hands who only do that, if that.
I wouldn't count the Nelms brothers. If you're thinking the Nelms brothers,
I'm not thinking the Nelms brothers. I'm thinking like what's his name, the Midas Touch guy, Zev Ohanian. That's one.
But he writes and produces.
Yeah, but he makes movies. That's all he does is make narrative content. That's like 100% of his job. Yeah, Averill. There we go. Yeah, we talked to what's his name, Fancy Boy Roy, Justin Kurzel. That's all he does.
What do you call Fancy Boy Roy?
Well, I don't know. He lives off in Australia. His wife's a famous actor. That's fancy.
Okay,
boy.
He is fancy. He's fancy.
He works with fancy actors. He's worked with Michael Fassbender.
Oh, that's true.
There's no one else we could say.
He's worked with Michael Fassbender.
And Russell Crowe, goddamn. 2 huge mega stars. Anyways, yeah, people like that. I mean, there's very few, and then I guess, for some, like for Malgo, she's like on the European system, so she's getting money from their government to make her art, so that like is even different, but it still counts. Anyways, the point of all this is to say this is a very interesting conversation and I hope you guys enjoyed it. But yeah, I think without any further ado, it's time for Get Shorty.
So you make movies, huh?
I produce feature motion pictures.
I got an idea for a movie.
Okay, so this week we have a short from writer-director Jennifer Gareski called The NonLove Story, and here is Jennifer to talk about her film.
Hello, my name is Jennifer Gareski and I'm a filmmaker based in Melbourne, Australia, and I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about my short film called The NonLove Story. So why did I make a short film versus any other medium? The reason why I chose to do a short film over other mediums was because it was mostly based around our school's curriculum for what we could film and could not film. So we were told to make a film under 10 minutes and we had 3 options. So we could either make a short documentary, a short narrative film, and a music video. And the reason why going more deep into that for why I did a short narrative film was because I've already had experience making a documentary and working on a music video, and I just wanted to make sure that my portfolio was as versatile as possible upon leaving my studies. The second question is, why this story? So even though the story is a non-romantic comedy, which is a very funny out there genre, but one of my professors called it that, which I thought was really hilarious. Although it is a very funny film, there is more of a serious undertone and serious meaning to why I made this film. And this film is based around anxiety and anxious thoughts of the future and being scared to face the music? How did your team come up with the funds? So this was one of the dips in the whole making of this film, which is totally okay. This happens. This is literally what this podcast is called. Like, making films is really hard. It all happened under the pandemic. So everyone was losing their jobs. Not many people were making that much money. There was all these things that kind of made a bit of a struggle with the funding. So my team and I decided to use Kickstarter for our website that we were going to do the crowdfund for. And again, due to the pandemic, no one was able to donate anything, which was a little bit of a concern, but totally understandable. I totally get their position. So it was a little bit of a worry because we didn't have any money, and we're like, okay, we don't need that much money. We only needed $300 for production design and for catering. But luckily, my family members were very generous to give me some money as well, and to be able to reach the $300 goal that we had, because we already had location for free, and like costumes and all that stuff were relatively cheap as well. So we only needed a small budget, and I very much lucked in. And yeah, I was really grateful that my family was able to help me out with that as well. Before making the short, what did you think would happen to your career because of it, and what did end up happening? So before I made this short, I was hoping, like I've mentioned before, that this will add a bit more versatility to my portfolio. And even though I just published this video, obviously nothing extravagant has happened for career-wise. Like, I'm not getting all these jobs here, there, and everywhere, which like is totally chill and all that stuff. But I was really surprised with the amount of positive reviews from everyone, not just my family, but like literally everyone, people, like acquaintances of people and all that stuff, commenting about how great the film is. And I'm so happy that people like it. I didn't really have too much of a thought of submitting it to a film festival, but people are recommending it, so I am planning to do so. Now that it's out in the world, what purpose does it serve? So again, like I've mentioned before, how I wanted the film to be about how anxiety can sometimes be your worst enemy. Sometimes it can help you, but a lot of the times it doesn't help you out very much, and it tells you the worst of the worst and what the worst things that could happen to you. And I know so many people who are like me from a few years ago because I've been diagnosed with anxiety as well, and I've had many of these thoughts as well. And when I first started like studying for filmmaking and all that stuff, my main goal about heading into this industry is to help people, give them ideas or to get them through hard times, but in a way that is artistic as well, and obviously something that people can relate to as well. So I feel as though this film is the start of my journey for what I want to get out of my career. And pretty much for this particular film, I wanted to do it in a way where I'm talking about something where I'm most familiar with and something that I've been dealing with my whole life, which is anxiety. And I wanted to make this to show people that, as cheesy as it sounds, like, they're not alone. I want to show people and to teach people that, like, even when you're thinking about these bad things that could happen in the future, they end up usually not being that bad. Would I do anything differently story-wise now that the short is done and dusted? Oh, done and released. Sorry, I read that wrong. If I could change one thing, it will be to base it in another location. And I am working on pre-production and writing for a web series which will be released, I'm hoping, within the next couple of years once I set that all up and all that stuff. Maybe even less than that. And I'm going to really seriously consider what locations I'm going to be using, and I'm going to like take that like very like super, like that'll be one of my main things that I'll be focusing on. Thank you guys so much for having me on your podcast. And guys, if you haven't watched my short film, I will hopefully comment down in the video below where you can check it out. So thank you all so much.
Beep bop, beep bop. Alrik, tell us your thoughts on the NonLove Story.
So I really like that it's like a bit of a sci-fi short. I thought that was really fun. You know, kind of sci-fi as the catalyst to have a series of gags, which was fun. I liked how over the top it was. That was really cool. I thought the performances were fun on both ends. I didn't like the predictable, obvious score choice. I thought that was like so lazy. And like, I mean, geez, how many sequences, how many movies, how many things have we seen scored to this classic, amazing track before that I think is in the public domain? But just because something's in the public domain doesn't mean you should use it in a sense. You know?
Similar thoughts. I'm now remembering.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like, sure, it's her first movie, I think, or very early on
emerging
in her
career. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I feel like, sure, I get you. I've done things like this, but I think it's an opportunity to either pick something that is less well-known and less classic that does the same thing that could also be in the public domain, or, get some original score going or something. But I mean, I don't know. It's just like, it works. It gets the job done. It's just, as far as creative levels, I give it like a 0 for creativity. I mean, really. So the other thing that was my issue is the computer simulation begin line that comes from the watch in the beginning. I didn't hear it the first time. Like I didn't quite hear it very clearly. I heard that there was something was said, like something blah blah blah, but I didn't really know what it was. So the whole gag of this movie of like, him basically trying to trial and error breaking up with his girlfriend, I was a little confused. I was like, oh, is he going back in time? Is he trying this and redoing it? Like, what's happening? And then I had to watch it again to get that it was just a simulation coming from his watch, that it was like a completely simulated thing, which was fun because, like, in the beginning, her voice is computerized and sounds like robotic. And I thought it was like a sound problem at first. And then when I heard that it was a computerized simulation thing, I was like, oh, they did that on purpose. And then when you watch the end of the short, her voice sounds normal. So it was like a good thing that they did. But like, since I missed that beat, I thought it was like an amateur mistake at first. But yeah, I mean, overall, very enjoyable and fun. And cool little short for your first go around, or second or whatever it is.
I watched it with closed captions just for that one part that you talked about. Like when I couldn't hear what he said either, so I started again and put on closed captions. And I was like, oh, a simulation. There's this play that I was in high school. Let me talk about this play I was in for the next 40 minutes. It's called Sure Thing. I think it's by either Ives or Durang. And it is this scenario, except for it's a first date. Right. So it's someone with a bell at the table, and every time they give a wrong answer, the bell dings and they have to think of a new answer. I mean, it's scripted in that way. So this was like, for me, I'm assuming that Jennifer has seen that play because it's a pretty well-known play and kind of did her own riff off of it. But it's not unbelievably original, but then like, whatever, Happy Death Day is Groundhog Day, whatever. So yeah, I thought it was charming. I thought it was fun. I'd say my only real complaint, and it's a minor one and I'm nitpicky about it, is that if you're going to have a simulation and you want to differentiate it from real life, have different background actors. Do you know what I mean? Like there's a simulation background actor, and he's the same guy in the real life scenario. So unless Jennifer's intention was to be in the simulation the entire time, I didn't think there was enough world building to really make the joke sing. And I would say also this is such a nitpicky thing, but I just felt like the female actress was kind of like dolled up, and the male part was just kind of sitting there and acting, but she had to kind of have this performative, like, perfect posture and beautiful dress and perfect hair, and I didn't love that either. Okay, I have 2 nitpicks, but that's all. These are my minor nitpicks about this cute sketch. Good job, Jen.
Yeah, like there was attention given to the woman's character for like, wardrobe and makeup and stuff. Yeah. But there was no attention whatsoever given to the male. He was just like in a t-shirt. And then that's it.
And he was adorable, but there was no like primping or whatever for him.
I mean, if he was like this super nerd who could make a simulation device, like, you could have given him more of a nerdy sort of ensemble to wear, or some kind of, like, make him more of a Dexter-y type character, from Dexter's Lab, just with, maybe not as over top as a lab coat, but, that kind of thing to, like, just, kind of go with it, to build his character out a little bit more,
Yeah, Yeah.
Yeah, no, I get you. I think that it's a very good effort. But I think, yeah, if the simulation had been given more of these details that you're talking about, of like, there is nobody in simply just taking out the extras, so there are no extras. So it's like, or changing the lighting more dramatically, because like they changed the audio, you should change the visual to go along with the audio change in some way. You could even like colored it green or something to make it like feel like the Matrix, or like something where it's clearly you're in another world when he's hitting the watch, and at the end it's like, oh, you're back in the real world now, his watch is broken, blah blah blah. Still very enjoyable. I think also largely because it was short, but short and sweet is like can't really be overstated how good of a thing that is. If you can make something that's entertaining in a short amount of time.
I'm now just thinking I have like an 11-page script for my short, and I'm like, I'm gonna make it shorter. Why am I doing this to other people? I'm gonna make it like 7 pages.
10 minutes for like a genre like horror short with like those a more fleshed out story with effects. I think 10's fine.
Okay.
7's good too, but I don't think it's a different thing. Like this, it's like a completely different genre or subgenre of short film.
This is a one joke charming sketch.
Yeah, it's a one-hander, as they call it, right?
Well, it's technically a two-hander, right? Doesn't it mean actors don't?
I guess so. I don't know. Correct us, people. Is it a one-hander or a two-hander? Maybe it's a two-hander. But no, this was fun. Thanks, Jennifer. And I hope more people just, she just sent it in blindly. There was just no Charm Star at work here. This was just her. So I hope more people.
Know.
Well, she didn't mention anything. I don't know. Charm Star. Did you tip Jennifer off to this? Is this how she found us? I don't know. We'll find out later, maybe.
But Alrik, you have mail.
My breath catches in my chest until I hear 3 little words. You got mail.
So last week we promised 2 letters, but we only read 1. But guess what? Here's the second one. So we also got a letter last week from Matthew Holmes, aka Mr. Voorhees, who gave us an iTunes review like a while back, which was really wonderful. But Matt writes this. He says, "Hey, so I wrote in a while back now, and you answered my question, and I super appreciate that. I'm writing again to let you know how awesome your podcast is." Wow. I've been super discouraged about my writing for the last few months after the release of my second book and stalling of my first feature script. I haven't played one of your podcasts in probably a good 2 months, but today I put one on and was immediately re-inspired and don't feel as much like giving up. The guest said the advice I hate to hear from all the made-its out there. The people who make it are just the ones who didn't give up. I believe in the stories I'm telling, and I owe it to those characters to do everything I can to let their stories be received. I thank you both for being a light in the dark that is the creative space and always giving honest feedback and shining a light on all the work that goes into the craft. P.S. Definitely do the vent crawling scene, Liz.
I did.
Matt, a.k.a. Mr. Voorhees, a.k.a. at Here We're Maine 2018 on Instagram.
Thanks, Matt. Why weren't you listening to us for 2.5 minutes? That's all I'm
How dare you!
Focusing on the negative.
That's so funny.
No, it's very sweet of him.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's good that people are getting inspiration from these conversations, because I was going through this whole thinking about my filmmaking career and what does it all mean and why does it matter and what do I want as a filmmaker and what do I want for my life as an artist? What matters most, Liz? Why am I doing this? And while working that out, it's fun and good to hear that other people are finding it helpful as well as I go through my own whatever therapy session on the show.
Yeah, have you figured it out? Are you out the other side? Are you still in the depth of obsession?
Yeah, I basically just want to make movies and get better at it. That's sort of what I've decided, and that it doesn't necessarily matter about waiting for a certain amount of money or a certain opportunity or anything. That it's really just trying to find the story that I can tell and do, either with the funds I have or with as little funds as possible, so I can just keep on creating stuff. So if I don't get an opportunity to make a movie for, $500,000 or $250,000 or God knows whatever else amount of money, then I could just go out with a really small amount and make something in my hometown, like around where I live, and not take myself away from, you know, my new baby, you know, for, you know, a long period of time, you know. So that's sort of like the thinking now is like, I'd love to make a movie within the next year and do it locally around here, you know, but I have to come up with a story idea that's worthy of it, you know. I've been watching a lot of these, like, you know, grindhouse movies lately, and like the stuff that Joe Bob puts out there, and you know, it's been really fun, and you know, it's interesting to see like when people had no money and like what they were able to do with no money, and as far as effects and story and just the whole movie goes, and then where people did have money, like The Shining, for instance, or like a bigger, you know, budget, you know, horror movie, and like the difference of what that looks like, and then how you can, as an independent filmmaker, can fit in with your like low budget thing. Like, what can you do that doesn't cost a lot of money that can still be shocking, like impactful and emotional, and like tell a good story without, like, you know, having to have all these resources, you know. So that's sort of where I'm at now, you know. And like, people will reference Primer in this kind of conversation, but I hate Primer.
I couldn't get through Primer. I tried.
It's just not
so
good.
hard.
Sorry, Shane. And who's Shane Carruth, who was
I'm
nice
not going
enough
to apologize to Shane Carruth.
He was nice enough to tell us that he wouldn't be on our show, but he would maybe one day if we asked him again. But is he a Me Too guy? Does that thing happen with this guy?
Well, he was abusive to his partner. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, never mind. I'm not apologizing to Shane anymore. He was really nice in that email that he sent, you know, 5 years ago or whatever it was. But yeah, I'm just not a fan of that movie. And so it's like, to do something on that scale, you know, with that kind of level, but actually make it good, and engaging, and just like, you know, fulfilling of all this genre goodness, you know, like bring the blood, bring the gore, bring the thrills, bring the, you know, really fun performances, like let someone just go nuts with this character or characters for 90 minutes, you know, like that's what I'm trying to figure out, like how to write that movie and make that movie, you know, with the resources that are available to me.
I was like, I'm listening to you, but I'm also like, he's going to ask me what I think, and I have to think of something to say afterwards, and I don't know what to say. But I think that you're in a very good place. And I can remember waiting for I wrote this like article when I was 3 months pregnant, and it was basically all my fears about my career dissolving once I had a baby. It was this idea that once you have a baby, you disappear and your identity is gone, and how do you find time for yourself? And I'm here with a 2.25-year-old to say that you could carve out time for yourself, and you could make projects, and you could build the lifestyle that you want, and daycare is a godsend, and so are nannies and babysitters. But I think that you're gonna have an extra soon. You're gonna have like an extra, like you won't have to pay millions of dollars for baby talent. You should make a movie where you have a free baby in there. Like, it's an asset. I'm just thinking, I'm bringing myself to where I was when I was waiting for a baby, and it's good that you're thinking ahead and planning for the project, because you could
exploit my daughter.
Exploit your daughter.
The plan.
But also
like Judd Apatow.
Plan ahead, because every day you lose time. No, it's interesting. I'm looking at things in a completely different way right now, where I'm pitching on I've never pitched before this year, and I've now pitched on 3 films, and I'm pitching on a 4th on Thursday, and I'm officially attached to this sci-fi feature, and I'm writing a musical, and I'm writing a horror film, and all these things. And like, my job right now is diversify, pitch and generate as many projects as possible, because I just feel like statistically everything fails, nothing's ever going to happen. But if you know that scene in 40-Year-Old Virgin? It's my favorite scene in like all of cinema. It's Seth Rogen talking about getting laid, and he's like, you know, you plant the seed as often as possible, and then you fuck the seed. That's
fuck
what
the plant.
I'm doing. Yeah, sorry.
Once the seed grows.
That's where you don't fuck the seed. Right now, I think you're in a much more thoughtful place about generating like an idea and a project that is meaningful to you, that stands out. I think I'm all about seed planting right now. Just plant as many seeds.
I think our listeners would be doing what I would be doing if I was hearing this as a listener, or will be doing, like how do you get these pitches, Liz? Like, I know you've answered before, like, oh, I got one on Twitter, or I got one from this friend, but like, is it just random people that you like meet online or that you know through your network, or like, how are you getting these opportunities to pitch on movies?
I thought, like, remember, I don't know if I've ever told you this, but like at the end of my second feature, I was like, oh, nothing's changed. I made 2 features and nothing matters. But I really am starting to think that having made 2 features does mean something, and it is helping me. So I think that's part of it, is having 2 features under my belt. The second thing is, one was from, 2 projects are from social media. A lot of them came from the same guy who's helping me, and he's like decided to go from a director to producer, and he's looking for women to produce his projects because it's like more appropriate now. So I'm a bit of a patsy for him, which is fine. I'm a willing patsy. I don't even know if that's a really off color. I don't even know what the origin of that word is. So now I'm worried that patsy is really, really inappropriate. So
I gotta look it up.
Yeah, please. Now I have to rectify the situation if I've like really shouldn't be using this word. But yeah, it's all informal. And then I never realized how important enthusiasm is. So if you read a script and it has legs, like, enthusiasm is everything. Whereas before I would be very lackadaisical about it, and I'd be like, oh, I'll read it. But now I put together a deck. I pitch what I can do. I try to become real. I try to use passion. I find something about it that appeals to me, and I fight to be on these projects.
Nice, that's awesome.
I don't know.
Well, good for you.
Offensive? I'm not. It's what I really
no.
Know.
So there's 2 different origins of patsy. One is from the Italian pazzo, meaning fool.
Okay.
So that's where it comes from. The other one is patsy is a diminutive of the name Patrick, which was originally slang for all is well, which then was turned into a noun that came to mean sucker later. In the sense of one being born every minute.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm like,
oh yeah, totally.
I'm like their token woman for a project, which I'm happily will be.
I think the usage of the word was on point, and I think it's not very offensive, and I don't think it can even be offensive to Italian people. Maybe Patrick's. I don't know. It could be offensive to Patrick's out there.
Sorry, Patrick's out there.
I found out the meaning or the origin of eeny, meeny, miny, mo, and now I cannot ever use that ever again.
Oh no!
It's very, very bad. No, I don't want to say it. It's very nasty.
Okay, well, I'm not going to say it.
Hurts my soul. But
I won't say the
people out there probably shouldn't use that. Should be canceled along with a lot of other things, because the origin is goddamn terrible.
Okay.
Anyways, yeah, I don't know. I mean, Liz, honestly, I wish I could be taking pitches and pitching on movies and planting seeds. Like, that'd be amazing. I just don't think I'm there yet. Having one feature that's not even out or done yet, I don't think I'm kind of ready for that kind of action. I wish I were.
I think most opportunities have come to me when I've faked confidence. Like, I started consulting and I'm like, I'm an expert, like, somehow I have clients. But where I don't know, that's very nice of you to say about the pitching, but I think this town is full of just broken dreams. And this is experience for me to be able to go in a room one day, which is my real fear, is to go to like CAA or UTA and pitch on something. Right now I'm just on Zooms. It's not very scary with people who are not terrifying.
Well, by the time you get to that UTA or whatever CAA opportunity, you'll be so experienced with the pitches, you'll feel great.
That's my goal. Let's just do some practice runs right now.
Yeah, I mean, I have a script that I'm working on with a friend, and we signed a contract. We're equal partners on it, which is great. But yeah, we're trying to get into rooms with it and get it out to people. But we're both like not really. We don't have that many connections. There's only so many people we can send it to. So. It's like the very beginning stages of that project, but I wish I had people to pitch it to, because it's fucking awesome, and it's gonna be an awesome movie when we eventually make it. It's like in the very early beginnings, but I also, in addition to that project, I want to write my own stuff that I could like make that doesn't need, whatever we think this one needs, like, almost $1 million or something, which is, I think hard for a second feature to raise that much. If it was $500,000, I think it'd be a lot easier. But since I don't think it can't quite be done for under $500,000. So it's like, it's sort of like this tough sort of place where, to do the practical effects properly, we just need a little bit more of the old cashola. I
mean, I've heard a lot of people. Well, first of all, I'm not pitching anything. I'm pitching to join a team already put together, so it's very different, right?
That sounds awesome too.
But it's not. But what you're doing is really difficult. But second,
different. Yeah.
If your script is really good, but even if they don't have the money, remember what we talked about with Jen McGowan, where she's like, she can trace the origin of every single project based off of a door opening years prior. So it's like, what I'm really excited about right now is if I'm attached to a project with legs with a really good script, then I can meet other people for future projects down the road. So even as you break down those doors, you're just planting seeds.
Right. Yeah, so I guess I am planting seeds. I do have a seed planted with this project. And yeah, I think I want to be I guess here's the bottom line. I know this is a really long conversation. Sorry, people. But what I've discovered is that I want to be a working filmmaker, as not in the sense of I'm like Jen McGowan and getting paid money to go shoot fancy awesome shows. I'd love that too, but I also don't want to be away from my family that much. That has really been very clear to me. I want to be an artist who's constantly making films. So whether or not they cost $0 and I make them with my iPhone, or they cost millions of dollars, I just want to constantly be making a movie, and working towards shooting that next movie. And so I would love to be one a year like Woody Allen one day, or one every other year or something. That would be amazing to just kind of have that sort of trajectory of constantly putting out a feature every 2 to 3 years or less. That's the dream, the
Dan Mervish career.
Yeah, except I don't think I don't need it to be that much money each time. They can be for pennies. If the movie can be made to be good at that budget level, then I want to do it. I don't need all the frills and whatever extras every time.
That's good. I think that's a good goal. I like that goal.
Well, I feel comfortable in knowing what I want in life, and what I'm excited about. I'm looking at a filmmaker like Stuart Gordon and just seeing how he consistently made movies throughout his whole career, almost pretty much up until he died. He was just constantly making movies, and it's that's what I want. I just want to be making movies forever and to always be a working filmmaker. And it doesn't matter if I ever get to the Clint Eastwood level or the Stuart Gordon level, or if I'm even more obscure than that. I don't give a shit. I just want to be making movies. That's all that I care about.
I like that. I think I want to make one movie that I'm not a cynic or a pessimist about, that I can be watch my movie, I'm really proud of it, and every single part of it I sign off on. So I think that's what I want.
Oh my gosh. I wonder how many filmmakers can say that.
None. We're all horrible masochists.
Yeah, we can sign off on every part of a movie we've made.
No.
I definitely can't say that about anything that I've made ever.
Me neither.
Short or feature. I can't sign off on every
Terrence
single
Malick
bit.
probably is everything is perfect of this film.
Maybe for his first 3. I don't know about his later ones.
Did you see Private Life? Oh my God, it's amazing. It's so upsetting, but really good.
I had to watch that by myself.
Yeah.
Anyways, this has been a really fun conversation. I hope everyone's enjoyed it. This has definitely sucked up a lot of time. Sucked up so much time that poor old Gary Kennedy is not going to get to be in the episode again. But deal with it, Gary. You'll get to be on a later one. That's fine. So, if you want to reach out to us, there are many ways you can do that, including writing an email, just like our good friend Matthew Holmes did. Thank you, Matthew. Matt, even. You can also write a YouTube comment, like so many lovely people do every week. Thank you. There's a YouTube page that you can do that at. I have it somewhere. Making Movies is Hard podcast on YouTube. That's what it is. You can also support the show on Patreon, which so many lovely people do. It's how I am able to pay for Cameron's editing support, which is amazing. Finally, you can check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at MMIH Podcast.
Yeah, thanks to everyone for listening. Thanks to Hudson and Jordan for being on the show. Let's all support This World Alone. Check it out. Support them, rent it, buy it. have your own screening party. Also, check out our website, makingmoviesishard.com. It's a repository for past episodes and lots of cool stuff to check out there. Thanks to editor Alrik for doing the editing. Alrik, thank you. Thanks to everyone for listening, and talk to all y'all next week.
This week we welcome producer, writer, and director. Wait, hold on. One more time. Yeah, you can check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and you can check us out at. Do it again.